All right. I'm so excited. I'm here with Kristen Lopez, and today we get to, tap into all of her knowledge, and we're going to be talking a lot about this idea of a modernized resident relationship. But before we get into it, maybe Kristen, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you got into doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here too. And so I have been in property management for the last 8 years, which sounds like a long time to say, but I've been here that long. And before that, I was in residential sales. And so I was a dialer for a team. I did a lot of outbound activities, commercial leasing. And I was a business development manager for a property management company. I coached some BDMs across the country. And then with my business partner, Candace Varvel, we created PM Path Builders, where we focus on helping property management companies grow. And two pieces of growth there. There's the sales. So how do we drive in and add more owners? And then the operations piece of that. How do we retain those owners on the back end to make sure that we're not growing and adding more doors just to churn them out on the end. So we focus on both sides of that so companies can achieve growth. We call that our capital G growth is what we're aiming for there.
That's amazing because, some people don't want to add more doors. They just want more profits. And some people are obsessed with getting as many doors as possible. You've probably talked to both types of folks. Talk to me about, how what you do is relevant for both scenarios.
Absolutely. So on the back end, whenever we're looking to increase those profits, it's really going in and looking at each of our processes and dialing those in to make sure that they are absolutely as efficient as possible. And so if we're looking to drive more revenue, we typically will focus in on that process piece and go in and audit each one of those and just making sure that we are as efficient, because sometimes we may think that we need a new team member, but really we just need to rework a process to make it make more sense for us. And so a lot of times the issues that we think that we have are not the issues that we have. And so really going in and dialing that in to make sure that we know exactly what we're fixing, that's what helps drive that additional revenue. And then on the door side, I can go 100 different directions as far as what people need to be able to grow those. But that's why those two pieces are so relevant, is extremely clean and efficient processes leads to growth, whether that's revenue or that's more doors, because what your salesperson is selling is your processes. And if your processes are not working well, they're not going to sell with very much confidence as they go out there and have to talk to owners.
So it's amazing that you've been kind of in the role yourself. You've done the job. I kind of came from a similar humble background of like my summer vacations were working in my parents' property management office, which was really great because you get to see all sorts of problems and all sorts of personalities. So much has changed over the years. And I think part of what was really fascinating to me about the talk you recently did at the NARPM National Convention was this concept of a resident relationship. Mm-hmm. And we're in an industry where for so long it felt like our customer was the owner, and we're focusing on kind of justifying the fees that we take to the owner and et cetera. But you gave a very compelling talk about the real customer in your eye. And tell me a little bit about who you think the real customer is in today's modern era of property management.
Absolutely. So I do always want to recognize that whenever we do sign a new management agreement with an owner, we do have absolutely a fiduciary responsibility to the owner. So yes, that is an important relationship that we have. But whenever we think about that owner, and if we have a single owner with a single door, that's one owner, one door. That one property for the lifetime that you manage it could represent 5, 10, 15 different residents that are coming into that property, which is that many new customers that you're having to constantly start over with, having to introduce yourself to. And whenever we think about who deals with these residents, a lot of times it's our property manager, customer success manager. And a lot of times people are like, oh, the tenants are just problems. Like they are just, every time the phone rings, they're complaining about something, or they're, this, that, and the other. And so for a long time, that's how we thought about these residents, or I will just use the word tenants, right? I think that's a very retro term, is tenants, right? Our tenants, we're collecting money, we're collecting their rent, and we're charging them a lot of fees, and we're making money, and it's fantastic, right? But whenever we shift into where I see like this modernization is we view them as residents. These are people who are occupying a home, which means we have a responsibility to them to provide safe and reliable housing for them, that we are getting things done quickly, that we are taking care of their needs, and we're being proactive with it to reduce kind of this reactivity that we've been living in, to where we're waiting for the phone to ring. We're waiting for that resident to tell us that something is wrong. How can we build a relationship with them to be more proactive so that every time the phone rings, they're not calling us to complain, right? They're calling us to have a conversation about something that's happening, and we're showing up with empathy, and we're showing up and having this conversation. And to me, that just changes it just a little bit, because we've not necessarily viewed it that way historically in property management. Our tenants were just almost like pests, right? Like they just occupied the properties and we dealt with them. But now we take care of them, and that does do better for the owner. It's a domino effect back to the owner, because now our residents stay longer. They take better care of the property, which means easier turns, more money in our owners' pockets, and it's a win-win-win all the way across the board.
Yeah, it's fascinating because the world evolves so quickly with e-commerce, right? So when you go to buy something, the Amazon effect of being able to find all the information, the reviews, the ability to get such kind of insight into something before you purchase it, and then after you buy it, how easily you can get the kind of the product in your hands. All that happened for such a long time. And in property management, because I've been doing this now for 30 years, like online leasing started maybe a decade ago.
Right.
It's now become so mature that, if you don't really have a well scripted process for a consumer to come find your availability, learn everything they need to do about it. Like you need really good photos, you need videos, you need the ability to have a question and have it answered pretty quickly, because I know you talked about this in the green room before we got started. It's like the next property is literally one click away. It's not the old days where you had to go drive around or look at, ads and do a lot of work anymore. People are making this information accessible. And in property management, those who are not really kind of modernizing the resident experience or journey, as I like to think of it, so it's so easy to get into your funnel and work your way through the funnel, then you're going to have them fall out. You work with a lot of property managers. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the market today, because I think another thing that you also kind of said is like the going was so good for so long. We had it so good. It's like, you had a property, you put it on the internet, and I got like 50 leads and I only had to talk to 2 of them. What do you see happening right now? And how does this modernization change what's required of people?
Absolutely. So there are less residents moving now than there was a year ago. I was on a webinar and I think it was said 18% less residents are moving this year than last year. That's significant. So that, going back to just like our basic high school economics, right? Supply and demand, there is so much supply and there's 18% less demand, right? People are staying put to where they are. And I mean, you drive around and you see all of these super nice multifamily apartment complexes being thrown up. You see just so much inventory that the options are unlimited, that if your property is not up to the high standard, next, right? I'm going to go elsewhere. So what I'm seeing there is that because there's so much demand, finding the small ways to stand out, and a lot of things are super basic. Cleaning the property while it's vacant to make sure that every time a resident walks in the door, it is clean and ready to be moved into, right? Making the application accessible, right? If somebody has to go on your website and it's more than 2 clicks to get to an application, that's 1 click too many, right? It should be so easy for somebody to apply, because if it's difficult, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They're going to find the easiest one to go to. So for a lot of companies, it's about rethinking the way that we are marketing these properties. And like you said, photos, it sounds so basic, but you would be surprised, right? You can get a really nice camera off of Amazon for not that much money that's going to take high quality photos. So it's rethinking about everything that we have done for property marketing up to this point, and how can we make it 20% better? How can we make it 10% better, right? And just making everything easier and more accessible. So it's really rethinking, reimagining, and making it as simple as possible for that end customer, which is the resident, and how they can move into the property.
Right. And that's the very beginning of the cycle, right? The leasing piece, which is like you're saying, you do the kind of the honest truth of how easy it is to do business with you. You go on your website, you see how easy it is to find the information you're looking for, how easy it is to have an answer to a question you might have. Pick up the phone, call, see if somebody even bothers to answer, and if they don't, how long it takes to get back. What's fascinating is when I was at RealPage, we bought a company called Level One, which is a contact center, and they showed us a graph, and it showed from like 3 o'clock to essentially like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. in the morning, a bell curve of calls that come in as people are getting off of work or they're on their way into work, and they're calling, trying to get some information. They're trying to set up a tour or whatever, and they just can't get a hold of anybody. And so to your point, it's so easy just to say next. And so as you're talking about engineering all these things to make for a better experience on the front end, there's a million different ways. And I feel like we're in an era also where, companies are like, wow, I could solve this problem thousands of ways. How do I approach this problem? What have you seen has been like the most effective way to re-engineer at least the top of the funnel, which is the consumer experience when they're first engaging with you? How do you approach solving this problem?
Absolutely. So really, we want to go in and look at the touch points and how quickly we're getting back to people. If somebody has requested information from us on a property, it should not take more than 5 minutes to be able to get them information about a property, and also sending them our other available listings. Hey, if this one isn't what you're looking for, please check out these here. So it's really looking into that communication, and speed to lead is so, so important, because we have to always remember this is not the only property that they're looking at. Please don't be naive and think that your property is the only one that they want to tour. It's yours plus 20 others, right? So how fast you can get information back to people is really the key point there. And then going in and looking at how we're communicating with them, right? Are we being welcoming? Are we being personable? Are we showing what it's like to interact with our company on a day-to-day basis? Because I think all of that matters, especially if they're an experienced resident. They've worked with other property management companies in the past. So how can we be just at a minimum friendly? Like, how can we be nice to these people from the top? And that's really how we want to start looking at it, is put yourself, like, literally submit on your own website a request and see how long that takes. Or if you don't want to do it, ask your mom, ask somebody removed from property management to do that, and have them give you the feedback on what it is. Because a lot of times we'll get in our own way and we will think that this process is perfect. Like, this process is the way it needs to be because I designed it that way. But just because we designed it that way doesn't mean it actually works the way that it should work. So ask someone who's removed from your management company to test it for you, and they can give you some real feedback on why it's not working or where they had difficulty. And that is some great free help that you can get from somebody to be like, hey, this was really hard. I couldn't find this. I don't know where this is. Now you have your punch list of what you have to go and correct, because don't get stuck in that and think that your process is perfect. Nobody's process is perfect. Get somebody to test it for you and see how it's working, because somebody will tell you how bad it is. They will let you know.
Yeah,
or good.
It's that idea, like, your baby may be ugly, but you're never going to notice it yourself.
Exactly.
So what's the biggest shift that you're seeing in, you talk about this idea of like the resident relationship and residents' expectations. How should property management companies evolve right now? Like, you mentioned this, like, I guess, secret shopping that you just mentioned, but like, it seems like there's an evolution that's being expected of many of the companies. You probably talk to a lot of people who reach out to you. They feel a sense of anxiety that they're falling behind on many of the things that they need to do. But what are the shifts that you are seeing people invest in right now that's really working?
Well, one piece here, there's many technological pieces, but one thing that I'm seeing is that I think that over the last 2 to 3 years, we have even over-engineered a lot of our processes to where we wanted automation, we wanted zero touch points, we wanted that we are not communicating with people because, hey, our tech can take care of that, or our AI can take care of that. And what I'm seeing is now kind of this bit of a shift back to bringing in the human dynamic of it, to where we're finding that there are some pieces within this that we do need a person involved in this, a person to welcome someone, a person to do this, or our welcome email is super long and nobody's reading it. Great. Now we need to supplement that in with some communication and different pieces there. So I think that we've gone to this point to where some processes were just completely like, hey, it used to be a bragging point, right? That nobody from my team has to talk to a single tenant before we get an application. That's great if that's working for you. But I'm starting to see the shift back to where some people want a conversation with somebody. They want to know who they're going to be working with. And so bringing in and knowing where to add in those humanized touch points with it. And so that's been something really interesting that I have seen almost kind of shift back to where some people may call that retro, but I'm like, no, we're revolutionizing here, because before it was like, get all those pesky people out of there. We don't need them. And now it's, no, let's bring in some contact. Let's bring in some human points here, just because setting this up right at the beginning saves it down the line whenever something does go wrong, because now there is that connection there. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's one thing that
Absolutely
has been coming up a lot for us.
I think what you're saying also that maybe the audience can pick up on is that you almost need to sit down and map out these touch points. And, absolutely. You go from, you talked about the secret shopper experience, like you kind of write out a persona. Like, I am a single mom with 2 kids looking for a home, and I'm coming to the website. Put yourself in that mindset. If you know a single mom with 2 kids, go shop my website, figure out where the touch points are. How does she get this information? How quickly do we get it to them? Is it enough? Is it too much that, it's like overwhelming? I think you're right that, because we both work in process engineering so much, people like to just build a process and never touch it again. And they're like, I did it. It was like 2 years ago. Like, wait, it's probably outdated. And I think part of what you're saying is like constantly understand where the friction is in the process and make it easier and easier and easier. And I agree with you. I am seeing the effects of like when you automate all the kind of the mundane things, if you augment it with some great human touches in between, then you stand out, because Absolutely. People were not expecting that, because the world is moving towards more never get to human, that if you just put that human in at the perfect time, you're the breath of fresh air where it's like, oh my gosh, like finally I can talk to somebody, right? And that's a big difference.
Absolutely. I think that some of the, I don't know if it's just my personality, but some of my favorite processes and things that we build are when companies are willing to be funny or willing to be personable within their communications, right? So where they're using GIFs or they're using memes or they're using emojis or something like that, to where they're just bringing these words to life, because it is just white text on a black background. Unless you're using a really fancy template, it's just text on a screen. That's what it is. How can you bring small bits of personality to it? And you're right, that's what makes you stand out, because not just is there more properties on the market, as the market continues to shift, there's more competition as well. People don't have to work with you. And so it is those pieces, and the people that are not afraid to be different, are not afraid to add in some of those touches, those are going to be the ones that we're going to see winning. And I don't think that any of those things make you unprofessional. I think they make you more relatable. They make you more human. And it's like, okay, I can talk to this person. This person is not my enemy, because a lot of times this like tenant, landlord, property management dynamic has been really hard, because it's me versus you, right? It is not collaborative. And that's what we're trying to bridge here, is that we're on the same team. Property managers, I want my tenant to pay their rent. I want them to be on time. I want them to be motivated to fix things within the property, to ask me to do that, because who does that benefit? My owner, right? The person I have my responsibility to. So we need to create this collaboration and not this tension point there. And that's where those touch points really come in handy, because now I know I'm talking to a person, because I think by now we can all tell when it's an automated message or when, it's something overly written by AI. We have a sense to that now. How do you step out of that, right? How do you step out of that and show up so that you can collaborate with your residents, not simply be their enemy? So they're trying to fight you all the time.
Yeah. And you made another really interesting comment, which I want to go back to, which is oftentimes after that beginning consumer journey, which is like, I got all the information, I rented, there were some bumps in there, but I'm in your home now. Oftentimes the next time you hear from them is when they have a maintenance problem, right? And statistically speaking, for decades, how you respond to maintenance issues, how you show up there is one of the reasons that a renter chooses to either stay in the home or leave. That combined with the second most is like how hard it was to communicate with you,
right?
And kind of what that relationship's like. You know, how does a company that's trying to improve resident engagement, like where do you recommend they start when you know that these moments matter? Like what are the things, like practical things we can do? Listening to this, I'm like, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great idea to make those touch points later just as meaningful as the ones in the leasing process.
Absolutely. So whenever we think about this window from an approved application to move in, we're requesting a lot of things from the residents, depending on company structures, things like that. Some people need, hey, send me your renter's insurance. You need to pay me this money. We're asking them for a lot of things. But what are we doing during that time, right? A lot of times we are making sure the property is ready to go. We're making sure that it's cleaned. We're making sure all of that. Once the property is all clean and ready to go, we can send them a picture of the house or like the inside and be like, it is clean and it's ready for your move in 3 days, right? To where we're creating this excitement of like, we know you're about to move in. So where we're not just constantly asking people for things. Instead, we're giving them something back, something to look forward to of like, hey, we've cleaned the property. It's ready to go. Nobody should move into a property and have a maintenance request 2 days later. If that's happening, we've got some issues that we can talk about on the move-in. But think about these gaps to where we're not talking to residents, right? Application to move in, we're sending them a lot of things and asking, what can we give back to them during that time, right? How can we make them excited to move into this property? And then once they move in and they start paying rent, yes, we're just sitting back and waiting for maintenance to happen. But if we're running applications correctly, we know when everyone's birthday is, right? And that is not a difficult thing to automate as far as sending out just an email. Hey, it's your birthday. Have a great day, right? That's very, very small there. And then also, why are we not congratulating residents for paying rent on time, right? Why are we not saying, hey, thank you so much. That's 4 months in a row of on-time rent payments. Thank you so much, right? We need to make sure that we are thanking and showing gratitude for the small things that they're doing, that they know that we're noticing what is happening. And none of these things that I mentioned cost any money. Not one single penny has been spent on any of these. Now you can absolutely go more extreme. I've got some companies that want to leave big, like welcome gifts at the property. And that's fine if you have the budget for that. But there's so many low dollar amount things of just information that we have that we can say thank you to, that we, why not? Why not express gratitude to our residents there? So I think those are just some touch points. And really it's going through the longest communication gaps, and it's application to move in because they're a little bit nervous. Do I have everything in? Is there anything else that I need to do? That's a big gap of communication there where we're just asking, what can we give? After they move in, after that point, show some gratitude, right? It can be so small as far as those pieces there.
So that's great practical advice. Like show gratitude, connect with them on these other milestones that are personal to them, like their birthday and whatnot. Are you saying also that potentially if I have a customer who's talking to me all the time and we're having a dialogue with them, that's healthy? Because like I've been a landlord for 30 plus years and it's like, I don't want to talk to you if I don't have to talk to you was the mentality back then. But I feel like in the last decade, I get more paranoid if I'm not hearing from my customer. It's like, I'm in the software business. A quiet customer may not be a perfect customer because you're like, oh, are they even using my product? But I think from a landlord perspective, are you saying potentially a quiet renter is not a good thing anymore? Like you do want to have a dialogue with them, or no, it's a balance? Explain that to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that it is a balance because there are some residents that just want to be left alone. Like, leave me alone in my property. I don't care about some of these pieces. And so it is a balance there. But I think that having a process around specific touch points is important, right? Whether the resident is responding back to you or not, you still showing up and doing that is very important because you're showing I'm here, I'm existing. Because I think that what we've really gotten away from is every resident that moves into a property is an actual human being. Like they are a real person with feelings and emotions, and they have a whole life that they live, right? And so it's important to remember that yes, they are an item on a spreadsheet for us. They are a checkbox that we're checking every single month. Did they pay rent? They are a person, right? So making sure that we are thinking through that and leading with that of like, okay, this is a person. Let's check in, see how everything is going. What can we improve on? Because that's then motivating them to tell you things instead of hiding them, right? Because if they feel comfortable coming to you, the worst thing on a move out is that a resident never told you about something. Like there is a huge stain on the carpet, or there is a hole in a wall, or something like that, that they just let it go because they were afraid to tell you. How do we stop that from happening? How do we know when these things are happening in the moment? And to me, that's by creating a great relationship with these people. And yes, some people don't want to talk to you, and that's fine. Just as some property managers don't want to be spoken to, and that's okay, right? We want to make sure that we are leading with building that relationship and respecting people and what they want to see and what they want to hear from us, but at least trying with every single resident to create that relationship. So to answer your question, I would say it is a true balance there between what people want, but we've got to try with every single one to create kind of that standard process.
Yeah, because we don't live in the Threes Company world anymore, where you walk by Mr. Roper's apartment. I'm 80s, kid of the 80s, right? And it's like you see your landlord, and he walks out, and you have that awkward exchange with him where you're like, and you walk away. Now you could go the entire time never seeing this person. And I think what's fascinating too is like one of the things that we've learned from some of our, I would say, world-class companies that have taken technology as far as it'll go, but have blended the human element of what you just said, is that they're actually progressively profiling their customers, owners and renters throughout their journey. So this means like little anecdotal things that they learn about them. They have a really well thought out, centralized place to put it where everyone on the team has that information. And when you talk to the customer, it feels like one really long conversation that doesn't feel sterile. Because when I'm now pulling up your record in my system, I know all the things that I need to know about you so that it doesn't feel like you're telling me your story over and over again. Right. Things like you mentioned things like, you know, their birthday, but like they have a pet. The pet's name is Ziggy, and he's a huge coffee drinker and all these things. And they start to build like relationship equity that you can start to cash in at some point when you're going to re-engage that customer to go through a renewal. And I want to talk about renewals a lot because you also opened it up by saying people are staying put now. And I know that one of the things you probably spend a lot of time working with people in your process engineering side is, you know, building out processes for like a lease renewal, like hitting that person. You know, one of the things that's fascinating to me, and I wrote about this, was like, I found it really fascinating that so many people will send off a renewal request 60 days before a lease ends. Why I think that's fascinating is because when I was with RealPage, we bought a company called My New Place. It's like Zillow. And we had all this information about buyer behavior in terms of shopping for their next home. There's a stat, and it's probably gone down now. I haven't seen the most recent version, but for a long time, 65% of all renters move every year. And when I first saw that, I'm like, that can't be. That is an apartment liver, somebody who wants to live in an apartment. They generally move in droves every year. And their mentality is, I'm renting because it's a lifestyle choice for me. Right. I don't want to own a home, Kristen, because like if there's a problem, I'm calling you and you're fixing it. Exactly. It's not my problem, right? And so as a customer, I'm paying this premium to live in this community, in my mind, to be totally carefree and not have to deal with it. This is also a similar paradigm that when you take that family trip, are you going to stay at the hotel or are you going to stay at the VRBO? Because at the hotel, you're cleaning my room every morning after I leave, and I expect certain things. Whereas at the VRBO, I kind of expect I have to do those things. Right. So where I'm going with it is, as you go into a lease renewal and you're talking to this customer, at 60 days, the data we found was that people were looking for their next home 90 plus days out. They're not waiting till the end of the lease to do it. So people should really be starting that process way earlier. And at the point of that renewal is really where you are cashing in that relationship equity, because they're going to be looking at all the ways you handled maintenance and how easy it was to communicate with you. And then they make this decision, like,
right.
Am I going to stay here? In your expertise of working with people, and now that you're talking about this modernized resident relationship, is it in your mind true that you really can measure its efficacy on its retention rate of your residents? And how do you help people optimize that so that they get the best outcome at that point?
Absolutely. So yes, to the first question, right? You can see how effective everything is up until this point of the renewal, right? And so we usually recommend people to send out their first communication 100 to 110 days before the end of the lease renewal. And we're actually sending out two pieces of communication there. One to the owner, where we're asking them, hey, your lease is up in about 3 months. Are you planning to do anything different with this house? Move back in, sell it? Because we want to know. We're not going to get into a full renewal if the owner wants to move back in or do something else with it. Then we're sending the second one off to the resident to ask them, hey, this is where we are at. Do you have plans to move? Because if they already do, they know, and they can tell us now we don't have to go through the renewal process, right? And so then we're trying to catch that at the very beginning there, and then having that conversation with them. So then by the time we get to day 90, we've already started this communication with them. So now they know exactly what their next steps are, and they know that a renewal is possible for them. Because I think a lot of times they don't even know that a renewal is an option for them, right? So we're letting them know 110 days before their lease ends, you can have a renewal. And a lot of times people will, yes, absolutely. So we can even start renewing that lease earlier and not have to wait until 60, 30 days, whatever our state mandate is of when we have to have a decision by, to be able to make that happen. And so, yes, you are cashing in that relationship equity because now they're more willing to tell you, actually, we would really want to know if we could buy a house. Fantastic. We have a licensed realtor in our office. Let us help you to buy that property, right? Or, hey, yes, I'm a licensed realtor. Let me help you, right? Now we can have that conversation. Now we have a new client potentially for our sales, right? What does that look like? Can we extend their lease for 2 months so that we can help them buy a house and then market the property back out? So it really is just helping that resident because they could buy a house. They could want to stay. Or if they do want to move, they tell us where they want to move. I really want my kids to go to this school over here. Great. Let me look to see what properties we have coming available in this school district or with this criteria. Let me send them to you. So then now we're taking this resident, moving them into another one of our properties, and we're able to help facilitate that. So really kind of bringing in this mindset of we want them to be honest with us of what their next move is and where they're wanting to go so that we can facilitate that to either keep them in our network or help them with whatever their next steps are. And especially if the owner is going to move back into the property, hey, the owner's going to be moving back in. Do you want to stay in this area or do you want to go somewhere else? So kind of taking this realtor approach of let me help you move to your next location, because if they're a good resident, they paid their rent on time, they've upkept the property really well, why are we going to go look for someone new, right? Let us continue with the person that we already have, that we already know. Let's help move them into a new property. And to me, that with renewals, I'm sorry, I think I kind of went off there, but
no, you're good.
The renewal process, that's what we want, is we want to have that relationship so they can tell us what they want. So either we do the renewal or we help them with their next step. And that's the whole point of the renewal process. And it's all from the relationship. So they feel comfortable telling us what they want to do.
You said something really interesting, and I didn't want to interrupt you because you had a lot of good sound bites in there. You said a good renter. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not the exact words you used, but you said something along those lines. And I'm fascinated because for 30 years of all the different companies I have come in contact with, I feel like now more than ever going into a renewal decision, we have access to so much more information when we're making this decision, whether we're empowered to make it for the landlord or the owner. And we say, hey, here's our recommendation. You should keep this renter. And we're also generally making a recommendation of if you should increase the rent, leave it the same. Very seldom do you ever reduce the rent, but those are the two options. But what types of ways are you seeing your customers and people that you have dealt with in the past going into the renewal decision? what types of data are they looking at that's giving them a strategic advantage, which is like, as a result of listening to Kristen and modernizing my resident relationship, I have more insights now to make a much more laser smart decision on keeping this renter, or, you know, force removing them because they weren't a really good fit for us. Like, what kind of data are you presenting that's new that you're seeing people use?
Oof, I don't know if it is new. I don't know if I can deliver new ever, but the number one data point is always the on-time payment history. Have they paid on time? Or if there was a month or two they did not pay on time, did they communicate that with us? Have they always been willing to work with us on their rental payments? That's obviously number one. Number two is the sheer number of maintenance requests that this resident has submitted to us, and were they justified or frivolous, right? Were they just kind of submitting things all the time, or how easy have they been for our team to deal with? Now, that sounds a little arbitrary, and to make sure we stay in with fair housing, it's really good to make sure that we have all of this documented out as far as who we're offering renewals to and who we're not. And it can't just be, I don't like this person. It needs to be, did they pay on time? How many maintenance requests did they have? Were they a pain for our team to work with, right? Did they have any lease violations throughout? So we're really looking at the history of how it was to work with them there. And then from there, we're making the determination and recommendation to the owners. I always like a strong recommendation. I don't like to let owners just be like, what do you want to do? And not give them any choices. Instead, be like, we think that you should renew this resident based on they've paid on time all 12 months. They have not submitted a ton of maintenance requests. They've been very easy for us to work with. We should keep this resident. Like, it's really, I think, comes down to that criteria, because anything other than that, I don't want anyone ever to catch a fair housing violation. So making sure that we can prove every single data point that we have as to why we're offering renewal to some people and not to another person is really important, just as important as placing a resident in a property, because somebody could say, you didn't renew me because of this or that. Be able to prove why you're offering renewals to some and not offering renewals to another. And those three criteria are usually pretty standard for us to fall back on.
And I think, just to say it a slightly different way, to recap what you just said, is that you need to be consistent in everything you do. You want to document a process. And this is why so much of the industry is moving towards automation and AI. It's like, you can't use AI until something is really well defined for either automation or an AI to do it for you. But we're not even advocating that you have to use AI. We're just saying, hey, build the system. Make sure it's repeatable and everyone knows how to do it. Document everything as you do it. And then you're obviously going to protect yourself from a frivolous lawsuit for somebody claiming that you unfairly judged them, but also that you can move things through the process and make people more efficient and use humans to really kind of like bring it home. Like, here's a great place where a call may be perfect. We've given this thing to the owner. It's all automated, but then we have that call and we're like, hey, just thought I'd touch base with you and just talk you through this. Or, hey, I thought we could just chat to see what your intentions are. Do you think you still want to stay in the home? Like, they're really powerful, right? At the point that happens. And I bring this up because I know you spend a lot of time also training business development reps or sales reps that are trying to bring new owners into the fold. Tell me a little bit about how this modernized resident experience turns into a powerful selling tool later when you're trying to acquire new doors.
Absolutely. Our renewal rate and how long a resident stays in one of our property is one of the strongest points that we can sell with, because as a salesperson in a property management company, you're selling your processes. And if your processes are not tight, or your salesperson doesn't believe in your processes, there is no confidence in what they're selling. So being able to back what we're saying and back our processes with our data is huge, because if I'm telling you that on average a resident stays in our property 3.5 years, and you go to another company and they say, yeah, they stay 2. Well, guess what? You have more consistent income with us, because now we are getting those increases on renewal. So on average, we're increasing rent by 1.5% every single year. So now that's consistent money you have coming in. Guess what? You don't have to pay a leasing charge every single time we have this, right? So it turns into just this really powerful dialogue to where now, whenever we're selling to somebody, we're able to present the facts of how well our processes work because of the way that our residents are within the properties. Because to an owner and an investor, I want guaranteed income. I want to make sure that money is coming in every single month, and I'm not going to be in this cycle of every single year, new tenant, new resident. Did you hear me? You said tenant, but new resident, new resident, new resident. Right. Exactly. And that's scary, I think, for an investor. And so on the sales side, understanding the way that our processes work and the proof of how well we're doing within, how much we're raising rent every single year, how long a resident's staying on average, what our renewal rate is. Those are 3 big key points that a sales rep should know, because that's what they're selling. That is the assurance of what we do to that owner, that we're going to show up and we're going to make this stuff happen, because we already are. It's the proof that of what we're doing works.
So I'm buying what you're selling only because, like, I've seen what you do. And when you guys get involved and you build out these amazing processes for people, you're coming in, you're helping them understand what those touch points are. You're setting it up so that the automation does what it's supposed to do. You're also making sure humans get injected where they're supposed to be. But what you're really saying, and I love this, is that when all that hard work, and it's thankless, you know this, like, building process is not for the faint of heart. You know, you have to have this really magic number you're chasing, because I have so many people that you and I both deal with where they're like, this is expensive, this is time consuming, I don't know if I have the stomach for it. But if what you're really saying is, at the end of this process, you're going to have this stat that is the killer sales tool. Yes. That you can say, our average days on market are X, and because of our killer process, we beat the market by X number of days. Our renewal rates are X, and because of, you're saying these magic numbers that come out of it help you not only save money and optimize your operations so people are happier, but I'm using it as a sales tool now. And look, I'm closing more deals because, like, the next guy can't even talk about this, or if he is, he's just blowing hot air, where I can actually show a dashboard, right? And I can show how it all comes together. Is that the magic moment, Kristen?
100%. And that is why at PM Path Builders, why we focus on both the sales side and the operations, because to do one without the other is just negligence, right? Because how are you going to go grow and not be able to show these things? And how are you going to put in all this work and not go show more owners? And they have to work together. Because yes, when you have data and you're able to show that to people, that is your proof. It's a service business. It's really hard to make tangible what it is that we are doing. So if you're able to show your data of how it's working, now you're able to bring it to life. Now we're not just selling words, we're selling actual actions and actual processes. So it is so important to have that data, because that's what beats the other people. That's what beats, oh, my cousin's a realtor and they're going to manage the property for me. Or, oh, this person's charging 4%. Okay, we charge 11 because this is what we do, right? You can charge more money if you wanted to, because what you're doing works, right? You're selling the value.
You're like a portfolio manager, and I'm proving that I can get you a higher return every year because I have operational excellence, and I can increase rents because people appreciate it. That, the quality of service is not something that will stay flat over time. The cost of living, everything goes up. So, so do your fees too. I think what's really interesting that I get a lot of feedback on, and just to put you in the hot seat as we wrap up, looking ahead, I mean, we just kind of went through this massive shift of people going in and investing in process and building these things out. Now it's like the AI era. Everyone wants to put AI in everything. But what trends and opportunities do you think will shape the future of this resident experience and property management operations? I mean, clearly you could say AI and not shock anybody, but what do you think are going to be some of the tactical things that you see people investing in the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months? I know I didn't prep you for that one.
You did not. Come on now.
Well, it wouldn't be a hot seat if I did.
I really think that data optimization is going to be a really big thing, to where data out of our property management software, out of our task management software, and really being able to go in and become more effective with what it is that we are doing. And some of that I think will come in the form of new technology, to where let us analyze all of these pieces. But I really think that specifically whenever it comes to the resident and us understanding how they want to be communicated with, but also what do they need from us, right? I think that our understanding of what a resident needs from us is very archaic. what we think that they need from us is just somebody to fix the maintenance, right? And I've seen some things come up on this as far as some companies will do, credit reporting for the residents, or some people will have a residence benefit package. But how do you take that and amplify it? That's been an idea now for maybe 5-6 years that we've had. What's the evolution in that piece there as far as listening to and understanding what the resident needs from us? And I think a lot of that does come from, we have a lot of data sitting around, and how can we look at this data and create trends or recognize trends that are happening within there of key times of the months that residents are reaching out to us, and how can we be proactive getting there, right? Or whenever like a cause and effect, when a resident does this, then this happens. How can we solve this piece here? And really going in and looking at the data that we have and being able to just pinpoint different pieces so that we can better understand how residents want us to show up. We've got it pretty dialed in for owners, always looking for evolution in that. But I think that where and how we treat our residents and what they actually need from us, I think that might shift just a little bit, especially as we're needing to lean into this of getting properties rented in really tough markets, making sure that we can retain these residents, and coming in and just getting laser focused on what it is that we're doing and how we're delivering it.
Yeah. You also, just to put a bow on something you said earlier was, you said, I reach out just with our clients to touch real quickly to see 110, 20 days out, like, is that renter looking to renew even before we start the conversation? And they may come back and say, we're trying to buy a house. And that's something that we should know about this person. And we can pivot that into either a relationship that we can have on our brokerage side of the business, or a relationship we have with, someone else, another firm that can handle that. But your point is like, man, we are sitting on a ton of information about this person who's chosen this renting lifestyle right now, either for a reason to keep doing it for a long term, and we want to be aware of what they covet, so that every time we hit the renewal point, we have checked their most important boxes. And if it's not that they want to be a lifestyle renter forever, that we can help them get to their objectives. You threw out the word rent reporting. It's fascinating to me that so many firms don't still report, positive rental payments to the bureaus, because you can really help them build a future, not only with that piece, but also just kind of like constantly keeping, you also said, hey, if you're not in the neighborhood you really want to be in, let me help you find the home in the perfect neighborhood. But these are questions that often go unasked. And when you say modernizing the resident experience, because you gave so many really good ideas, you're really saying there are all these things, and you just need to put them in a place where your entire team is constantly able to access it and continue to improve it, because the more we can blueprint our customer, the better we can serve them.
Absolutely.
So it's a really important thing that I think in 2026 and beyond, if you don't do it, you're going to look like a fee chasing property management company versus like a real true partner to both sides of the equation. Kristen, is there any final thoughts you want to leave people with when they think about, kind of everything we've chatted about in terms of the resident experience, or how you manage relationships with owners?
So I think that really a lot of it just comes down to the most basic thing, and that is caring, right? Is actually caring about the people that we are working with. This is a process business. It's a people business. And so we need to make sure that we are keeping that at the forefront of our mind, that these are not simply numbers on spreadsheets. And so a lot of things, like when I think about them, I'm like, it's just showing up for another person. It is just creating a relationship, because that's the way that I'm wired, is I'm relationship focused. And I know that's not the same for everyone, where they need those standard checkpoints throughout. But that's something that I think that this industry just needs to keep at the forefront of our mind, is we are, for our owners, providing a vehicle for them to get from where they are to where they want to be financially. And for residents, we are providing safe and reliable housing for them. And we need to make sure that we are taking care of both of those, because yes, finances to the owner, but respect to the resident, that this is their home. This is where they are choosing to live, choosing to have children, fur children, right? Whatever kind of children people choose to have, right? that's what we're providing. So making sure that we take what they say seriously. We are really treating them with the respect, because the happier that resident is, the more likely they are to renew, the more likely they are to take better care of the property, which then just does so many things. So to me, it comes down to just really the basic, and I know they're not to everybody, but just basic showing up and caring about people. And that's really what it comes down to. We just need to remember that we are people that do property management. Yes, I know property manager is the word, but we are people that do property management, and people first is what we are. And keeping that at the forefront of our mind, I think, just does so many things for business and for everyone.
It reminds me of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Correct.
Like, you're like, start at the very bottom.
Yes.
They just need a safe place to live. And then you kind of work your way up.
And then at the top, there is the 5-star review, right? But yes, you've got to get that bottom one. Otherwise you're not going to get to the top.
That's a whole nother conversation. Well, you heard it here first. And I think you've given us a lot to think about, Kristen. How do people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you and kind of learn more about how you can help them?
Absolutely. So you could go to our website, which is pmpathbuilders.com, or you can reach out to us at hello@pmpathbuilders.com. Either one of those options would be great to reach out to us.
And I know you guys are solution providers in our network. I have tons of glowing reviews from customers who've worked with you. And I think one of the things that they always say is like, you guys really do put in the effort to build these really custom solutions that really meet the customer where they need to be. So, coming from my point of view, I always hear about you guys with glowing kind of feedback that you helped them overcome a massive challenge that they had to kind of modernize their businesses from where they were to where they're going. I think that is knowing it, because we do it too here at Appley ourselves. There are no shortcuts to it. You just have to really have someone who's fully invested in your future and wants to help you get there. And I know you guys have done an amazing job with that. So
yeah, absolutely. Just a shout out to my business partner, Candace, because she leads a lot of that front on the actual technical build side of things. And she is phenomenal, that we could not do what we do without her. She is integral to everything. You are a
dynamic duo. There's no question about that. So, well, thank you again for taking the time. And anyone who wants to reach out, we'll put some information in the podcast here too. So if they want to follow up, they can. Thank you, Kristen, so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.